It's looking like March. We've got a number of interesting parties in the film. So we're very much hoping that Sitges helps us push Splice over the edge and into the hands of a great US distributor. We're talking March 2010.
Oh, wow.
March 12th, if I had my way. That's the perfect weekend. Yeah, it's a long time coming, but then it's taken me about 12 years to get the film made. Right, so if Syl fucked E.T., you get Splice. No, actually, people keep bringing up Species. I have never, in the process of making this film, did I even think about Species. And I think the reason is because, well, I suppose there are some superficial similarities. Splice is a totally different kind of movie. It really is a creature film spliced with, I don't know, Kramer versus Kramer. It's a relationship movie, and in many respects, it's a very emotional film. I mean, that's where you could draw some comparisons with E.T. because the Clive and Elsa, the scientists in the film, create a creature that they develop a very strong emotional bond to, and that's where I think Splice, as a horror film, diverges from a lot of other creature movies. Is that it really embraces this love triangle and the story of how these three characters grow and interact with each other. You know, the wonderful thing about this was that there were no limitations for me. In terms of technically what I could do, well, I shouldn't say that. There were certain technical limitations, but much more significantly, there weren't any limitations in terms of what I could put on the screen. This film was made completely independently. It was made with a French company, a great French company called Gaumont, one of the oldest film studios in the world. And there was absolutely no effort on their part to push me in any kind of direction. I had total artistic control, I had final cut. And so I think Splice definitely steps into places that other movies have been afraid to tread. There's a sexual component to the film that I think is very unique to this movie, and it definitely pushes some buttons that maybe a Hollywood studio would be afraid of. Well, you know, we really weren't, in creating DREN, we really weren't using any tools that didn't exist already. We weren't like James Cameron, who truly created new technology to make his movie. We were using a lot of stuff that was off the shelf, but it was the way that we applied it, I think, that's somewhat unique. Because more than anything, I wanted the creature, DREN, to be as real as possible. I didn't want to make a creature that in any way you could point to and say, that's a special effect. And I also was determined to make a creature that we could relate to emotionally. So I knew that at least at a certain stage, I would have to use real actors. I really think that's the key. Now, I haven't seen Avatar, so maybe that will completely change everything. But for the time being, I just don't feel that an audience can relate to a totally digital character in the way that they can relate to a real actor, especially on this level, because the creature is really a character in the movie. There's three central characters, and she's one of them. It was important to have that human touch, and in fact, thank you for saying that you thought it was successful. I think a big part of the success of DREN as a creation is Delphine Chanéac, the actress who played DREN, because she's the one who brought DREN's humanity to the screen. She's the one who makes you connect with her on a very humanistic level. And the other thing that I tried to do was to adhere to the science. I didn't want to make a picture that was too fantastical. I wanted to make something that you really could believe exists or could exist. And in doing research for the film, what I realized was the story in Splice, the story that we were telling in Splice, is really not that far from what is possible, what is actually technically possible in the real world of biogenetics. As opposed to a lot of creature films where they add onto the human form, I wanted to be subtractive, and I wanted to be subtle. I actually feel that when you change somebody's face in a subtle way, it's more shocking than if you do something drastic. So maybe some of her realness just comes from the fact that in designing her, we didn't try to be too flamboyant. We actually tried to stay close to reality. Well, without giving too many things away, it was a hybrid. Our hybrid creature, because DREN's a hybrid of different organisms, was a hybrid process. We, depending on which stage in her development we were shooting, we would use different techniques. So there are moments in the film where she is totally CG. There are other moments where she's totally a puppet. There are moments where she is a human being who is partly digital as well. And there are moments where there's very little work being done to her at all. So it really just depends on the stage of her evolution. And you know, we had the K&B guys doing a lot of our makeup work and our puppet work, and they're fantastic. We had a brilliant sculptor named Tom Zarnaby, who actually sculpted DREN in her early stages. And I think all of these guys were just really dedicated to making something that was biologically plausible. And I truly think that's the reason why it feels real. Because, you know, for instance, I'll give you an example. When in DREN in her adult form has triple jointed legs. And we explored the idea of putting the actress Delphine on stilts or on some kind of special shoes. And the result was, it looked like, even though we were replacing her feet and painting out those stilts and so on, it felt like she was on stilts. It just didn't feel natural. So ultimately we just decided, let's put her in high heels. And because she's French, it's very natural for her she's a French woman, so she wears high heels like you and I walk in bare feet. It was totally natural. And so wherever we could, we actually tried not to use too many gimmicks, too many effects. We really tried to use, you know, her body. And I think the result is not only that does she look real, but she moves in a very realistic way, in a very natural way. First of all, I am a huge fan of digital effects. I think it's a tremendous tool, but in general I would say they're best when they're incorporated with something physical. When you enter the completely digital world, that's where it becomes a bit dangerous. And any CG artist will say if they have something physical, even if it's just like a reference, like for instance in the scenes where DREN is a fully digital character, we always had a physical replica of DREN on the set so that the animators could actually see the lighting, how the light actually affected the skin, and it really has an impact. And frankly, I think where maybe sometimes digital effects fail is when the artists just don't have those sort of, you know, touchstones. But you look at a film like District 9, and those are fully CG characters, and they're perfect. I mean, they're awesome. So I do believe you can have digital characters that look real.